Hello, everyone. This is Jim from Conversa. It's great to have you here today. Letting you know this is our first webinar of 2018. We're excited to get the year started off right with Michael Fleischner. He's got a great presentation about our online presence and how to manage that. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn the presenting role over to him, and he can get started.
All right.
And Michael, there we go. I've got you. We're seeing your monitor now.
Fantastic. I'm on a dual screen here, so my apologies if you weren't seeing it. All right.
There we go.
Great. So without further ado, let me just kind of introduce myself. My name is Michael Fleischner, and I wear a lot of hats in the marketing and digital world. I work for a company called Caliper that does HR assessments in terms of kind of my bread and butter. At the same time, I also run my own consultancy called Big Fin Solutions, and I essentially help companies with online reputation and digital marketing. I do a lot of SEO, search engine optimization, which we're going to be talking about to some extent. We're going to be talking about online reputation today, but it's really based in and baked in this concept of search engine optimization. And I've been talking about this for almost 15 years now. I'm kind of one of the original guys. I wrote a book called SEO Made Simple, which is now in its sixth edition, sold all over the world, over 50,000 copies. And what's interesting is, even though SEO continues to evolve and change, it really is kind of the underlying construct of reputation management, and making sure that whether it's you as an individual or your business is really represented in the best light on really any device, right? Because now we're so connected. The mobile phone counts for about 68 or 70% of all searches. And there are certain things that you need to do to make sure that whether it's you as an individual or your company shows up consistently and shows up in a positive light. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump in. And I like to think about SEO as this proverbial drinking from the fire hose. There's just so much to be aware of, so much to think of, so much that you have to consider that oftentimes it's just overwhelming, right? So my goal, and one of the things that I like to do, is simplify everything. And one of the ways to simplify search engine optimization, and more appropriately, online reputation management, is to understand how search engines actually show information. Like, what is the algorithm ultimately? What is it that they consider in terms of ranking? Now, anyone you talk to in the digital space, if they tell you that they know the Google algorithm and they know all 200 plus iterations of that and components of that, they're full of baloney. Nobody knows exactly what those things are, but what people do know, especially SEOs, people have been doing this for a while, are what factors are consistent. What are some of the fundamental factors that Google looks at when they're really trying to optimize, or optimize results, essentially. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive in, and we're just going to kind of lay the groundwork. A question I always get, and I still use this screen, is, well, what about Yahoo and Bing? That's generally what the question is when I start talking about Google and managing your reputation on Google. The reality is that the place to focus now is not Yahoo or Bing anymore next to Google. It's actually Facebook. So if you are not yet serious about Facebook, you should be. Again, whether you're I would say both, as an individual as well as from a company perspective. I would add, if you're looking at individual reputation management, you should consider LinkedIn as well. But these social channels are very much integrated into not only what we're doing, but they're also integrated into the Google algorithm and the search results that Google is producing. All right. So again, here you can see that Google's still, the king of the town. Facebook follows, but they're at like 6% of internet traffic. And this was a recent report from ComScore So if you guys are looking for references, you can just Google that. But Google's still it. Now, what's interesting is now that mobile is so pervasive, we're looking at different stats from mobile compared to desktop. So you'll notice here on a mobile, CTR stands for click-through rate. So a mobile device, it could be your phone, it could be an iPad, it could be an iPod, whatever, if they even make those anymore. But the results are interesting because there's only a 2% click-through on paid results, a 40% click-through on organic results, and the biggest thing is the people who don't click. So people, and this is a trend that we're going to be talking about in depth, but you see on mobile what the rates look like. Now let's look at desktop. So on a desktop search, it's actually a higher click-through rate, not only on paid ads, but also on organic ads as well. So we have to think about the user experience when we're trying to shape our reputation. And where this really comes in handy is, for example, the length of certain descriptions that we use, because on mobile, they'll get cut off, but on the desktop, they won't. So again, as you're thinking about not just necessarily the name of your company, but if you're trying to describe the products you offer, the services you offer, basically that ecosystem, you need to think about how people are viewing that information on the other end of whatever it is you're sending. And that's something that we tend to overlook. So just keep that in mind. And again, this is where people search. It's not just Google anymore. Yes, it's Yahoo, Bing still, but people are searching on Google Maps. People are searching on Facebook. People are searching in Yelp. They're searching in OpenTable. They're searching in apps, believe it or not. So now that this phenomenon is kind of changing where people go, we need to think about what kind of mindset are they in when they go to these places, right? If I'm in Facebook, it might be inappropriate to be running, let's say, business ads if you're a certain business type, because people may not be thinking about it at work. But on the other hand, if you're a dry cleaner, maybe you start showing ads at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because people should be thinking about dropping their dry cleaning off on their way home. So again, think about how people are searching today and all the different places they're searching. The good news here is it really creates an opportunity for us because there are more places to be found. Again, proverbial fire hose, there's a lot to think about, but there are some new things to think about as well. So this chart is kind of a breakdown of searches on major web properties. So you can see the traditional things we've been talking about. Some things we haven't talked about. Look at Google Images, 27.6%. And this was some research done by a company called JumpShot. It's noted there in the lower right-hand corner. But what I found so surprising is kind of the realization that people aren't just consuming text in a real way, in a meaningful quantity, but images is huge, right? Now, from an SEO perspective, we always optimize for images. We want them to load quickly. We want to make sure they have something called alt tags, which helps kind of define the nature of that particular image for search engines to read. But we never really thought about it as one of the primary ways to optimize. And quite honestly, that's just a segue into Facebook and YouTube and all of these other channels that are happening. And a lot of this is based on mobile search behavior, right? So I don't know about any of you, but I have 2 children. One is 15, almost 16, and the kid watches everything on his mobile device, mostly YouTube videos, but also, other social media like Instagram and Snapchat and those sorts of things. So again, know your audience, know how they're searching, and try to understand where is the best place for you to position your business or position yourself to get noticed. Okay, so this is something that has really evolved over the last, I'd say, 2 years. We've been talking about universal search results forever, but this is really how you need to think about your business, your brand, your online reputation. It comes down to what someone searches into the Google search bar predominantly, or Facebook, or one of these other sites we've talked about, and what shows up in search results. And no longer is it a list of just text. If it is, that's a great opportunity for you, and I'm glad you guys are listening today, because we're going to talk about different ways to shape your reputation and kind of your digital presence online. And you can do that by going beyond just, a web page, an HTML web page. So if you look here, let me kind of dissect this a little bit for you guys. I think I might have some drawing tools here. Yeah, so let's do this. And let me just kind of show you that here, we have a couple things to think about. One is, I don't know if this is going to let me, unfortunately, I'm not able to use that. Let's go back. All right. So fortunately, you can see here that, the results are pretty multifaceted. The first one is from the news. You can see it says news, Oscars news. The second one here is actually a video. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Google owns YouTube. So that's why you see YouTube videos showing up in search results, not Vimeo, although there are other providers. Here is the actual site related to the Oscars. Here's a Wikipedia entry. Wikipedia is still a thing. A lot of people don't believe in it or think it will go away. And to some extent it has. It's lost its emphasis in the market, but that's still showing. And then you see other news kind of happening here, down here. Sometimes this will be related videos. The other thing that I think is even more interesting is really what you see over here on the right-hand side. So this is a data card that's produced by Google. Actually, Google My Business is the primary way that you as a business will get kind of this billboard. But what if I were to tell you that you could get this billboard in search results absolutely free, and you could control all of the content in it? Would you be interested? Of course you would. We all are. And this is something called Google My Business. I'll walk you through that in a little more detail in a moment. But this data card is extremely important. In some situations, Google will build it for you, but it's always best to not only claim it or verify it, they call it verification, but also to make sure it's completely filled out. So somebody here, I'm sure this was kind of coalesced from other content on the web, and Google just produced it because obviously this is a big event. But all of this information on your own profile can be created, and it can be done for free. Okay, so what about here? So here you can see that there are other opportunities, and this is pretty common if you're, let's say, a bakery or people are searching for recipes. You'll often see in search results kind of instructions. So think about your business. Are you developing a product, a service, something where you're instructing people or teaching people how to do something? You could say step 1, step 2, step 3, and optimize some of your content around that so that when someone does a search query, you're providing the answer, and then sometimes there's a link to your content. The other thing that kind of happens is people also ask bar. So here, obviously, the content was related to pasta and semolina, we don't want that, semolina. So you can see that they're trying to answer the user's query related to that, and these expand when you click on them. And then down here, all recipes. I would use this to be synonymous with, think about your business. How are people reviewing your business? How are people sharing and talking about your business? And reviews today are a huge thing. They're huge predominantly because of the visual aspect of a review, right? In the past, if you wanted a review, you would ask a friend and have a conversation and they'd make a recommendation for you. Now you just do a search online and boom, this snippet shows up that shows ratings, the number of reviews, and sometimes we'll have an excerpt of the review. And then finally, a video. All right, so just on this one page, look at how search results have evolved and changed so radically. So we're going to talk about how to take advantage of all of these things, but it really needs to start with a fundamental understanding that you can't just throw up a web page anymore. We have to think multimedia. We have to think more about the user, how he or she is conducting a search and what they're looking for. And then based on that information, you can start to develop content. You can start to utilize different media. You can frame things in a way that will optimize you for gaining, a more robust reputation online. All right, here's an additional opportunity. This is around an individual. And yes, I understand it's Stephen King. The world knows Stephen King. But many of these are possible, if you're a professional. It all depends on your industry and some other things. But this is a data card that's just focused on Stephen King. And what's so interesting about this is Google is, because there's something called Google Books, so they know what Stephen King has published, but they're also pulling in his social media profiles. Now, this is the second time you've seen something with social media profiles. I wish I could show you more and more, but the reality is if you are not active on social, if you're a business, I obviously recommend probably the same ones I would for individuals, which is Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Although Twitter, from an SEO perspective, is becoming less and less influential. I think Instagram, Snapchat, others are weighing more heavily, so that's something to think about as a business or as an individual. But again, Google's integrating it into search results, so it gives the searcher multiple chances to connect with the additional information. And what about this? So if you're a local business, this should look really familiar. This Google Pack, 3-pack, it used to be a 6-pack, is based on a number of factors, obviously location, but also reputation. You can see all of the stars and number of reviews here, and also how much information is provided. What a lot of people ignore is they say, oh yeah, I'm on OpenTable or I'm on Yelp, but they haven't taken the time to fill out all the information and really make it a robust profile. Google is using that information to publish content, in reaction to a searcher's intent. And if you have very little information and the next guy has a lot of robust information, including pictures, photos, videos, who do you think Google's going to show? They're all about creating a positive user experience. So you want to go back and look at that. You want to make sure that whatever you're doing that has your name on it, individual or business, is completely filled out. I would make the same argument for a LinkedIn profile. A lot of the work that I do with individuals, especially when they want to build that online reputation, starts with LinkedIn because it naturally ranks high. But what I find is that people haven't really taken the time, sit down over a cup of coffee or a cup of wine, and just fill that whole thing out. Add as much as you can. Google likes to see that. They want to provide in-depth information. You can also see down here that there are other sites like Yelp that are ranking. And again, this ecosystem is really what's creating online reputation today. Now, this is interesting too. A lot of the more recent work that we've done is around apps. And even with apps, Google is kind of ranking apps based on user feedback. And, apps should be thought of maybe as a separate digital asset, but they can be leveraged to really gain more real estate out on search engines. All right, so this kind of wraps up this piece of components, all the different things you can think about, and I'll work with Jim. We'll make this presentation available to everybody who stays to the end. But these are it's kind of the laundry list of what you need to be thinking about. Video units, are you producing video? That people also ask feature, and thinking about what someone might ask, and then what are the additional questions they might ask, and maybe writing content to answer those. The featured snippet, that's phrasing and positioning of short answers in content. Sometimes that's brought in automatically from Google. Sometimes you can use schema markup to tell Google how to do that. Maps, people are going into maps, they're searching. The knowledge panel, again, more structured markup, but essentially the knowledge panel is often a snippet, if you will, of content that answers a user's query. Top news stories. PR is not dead. I know that in terms of news releases, they may not stay indefinitely, but if you want to get some quick wins, often doing some type of press release is still helpful. Probably won't get you on the front page of of the New York Times, but it'll help with organic results. Images, optimizing images. So are you using images in your business? Are you using your own images? When you Google yourself, are there a lot of pictures of you or one picture, which happens to be your LinkedIn profile? You know, if that's the case, you really want to start thinking about how can you build a repertoire of photos that are kind of representative of what you do and how you do it. I know even today, as an individual, you can go to, I don't know, Target or Sears and spend a couple $100 and get, you know, a bunch of photos. Apps, so we talked about that briefly. Books, now these books don't necessarily have to be 250-page books. They could be ebooks, you know, they could be white papers, they could be any of these things. And there are obviously ways to leverage that through e-publishing, but it's something to think about in support of your business or your individual professional career. Related searches, so again, this kind of goes to related keywords. Use Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn. All of those things seem to appear in search results. Twitter a little less so, but you know, this is just kind of a reminder to think about social. Site links, so what are your popular pages? Can you create some coding through something called Google Console? Used to be called Google Webmaster Tools, but you can kind of define what some of the key pages are there. And then finally, in-depth articles. Google still likes lengthy content. It's still important to be able to create these small digestible pieces of content that they can pull into search results. But they're usually doing that from longer articles, 600 or more words, you know, graphs, data, research. So think about what kind of content you can get behind and produce that'd be truly meaningful. All right, so what is Google's biggest secret? So this is the biggest shift that I've seen in my 15 years of doing this. And what's so significant is that Google's primary business model, which has always been serving up results with ads to get you to click through, because every time you click, right, the advertiser is paying, Google's making money. Now what they're doing is they're actually trying to answer your query right on the first page. And this is a fundamental shift that, again, I have never seen, and I think it's going to be the focus of Google, even more so in 2018 and 2019. So we're going to talk about the shift, and then we're going to talk about how you can take advantage of it. So here's a great example. So it used to be that the ads, so the ads that kind of appear on the top here, that was it. And Google was all about getting you to click on those ads. Now what's happening is you can see this snippet here. This search was related to Japan prices, I can't even pronounce it, Ryokan prices. And it's showing here in the result what some of the costs are. And people also asked, so what is it? How much is it? You know, so on and so forth. And my only point is that this is really a fundamental shift. In the past, they would just have site after site after site after site, all kind of leading you to stay on that page, or I'm sorry, to get off that page as quickly as possible. And now what they're doing is they're getting you addicted to search. So even if you're saying the euro to the dollar, well, now they have a calculator, or you know, ounces to pounds. They've built in all of these tools so that you do not have to leave the first page of Google to get the answer, but it's actually being answered right on the first page. And the only reason they're doing that is because they're getting you addicted to Google as a search engine. Why? Because now you have all these other options that you didn't have before, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Yelp, whether it's City Search, whether it's, you know, some other local site. They want you focused on Google because they know in the long term they're gonna have your eyeball and you're gonna stick with them, and that ultimately will mean more ad revenue for them. It might not mean it in the moment of search, but again, they've got deep pockets. They can wait this thing out. So they're getting you back to Google and they're getting you addicted to search. Now, one of the ways that they're doing this is through all of the data that they've collected on you as an individual and in aggregate to better predict what it is you're actually looking for. And here are some of the factors that they consider. Location, also prior behavior of people in that location. So for example, if I'm at a sporting venue, I'm going to be asking certain questions, from that physical location than someone who's not at that venue. The other is really your device attributes. So what type of device do you have? What are the apps you have installed on your phone? How often do you use that? How often do you check these different things? They're really kind of monitoring all of that behavior to the extent that they can. And they're using that behavior to, in essence, predict the types of questions you're asking and what sort of results you're looking for. The other is around Gmail. So we don't know this for a fact, but we believe that they are looking at your email activity. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it could be how often you check it, what device you check it on. It may not be like, what did John say to Phil? But it could be, we don't know. They're also using kind of these time-based patterns to deliver content to you. So if they know that every morning at 7:30 I log on to my desktop, that's when I might see certain ads, but maybe in the afternoon I'm doing everything on my phone, so certain ads may be, or content may be customized for that user experience. So think about AI, artificial intelligence. Think about how things have evolved. Massive quantities of data and data analytics, and all of this is kind of happening across probably hundreds of thousands of servers in real time, and the computing speed is amazing, and that's able to customize your experience. So it's not just your browser history, although that's part of it, it's all of these other factors as well. Okay, so now the big question becomes, if you're trying to shape your online reputation, if you're trying to control what other people see in search results, how do you do that? And there are a few different ways that we're going to break this down. All right, the first is thinking about the content that you're creating. And it's not just the content you're creating, it's also how are you creating that content. So we're going to spend a little time on that. The other is links. And what I mean by links are essentially other people linking to you, right? Where are you getting kind of this third-party endorsement? And we're going to explore how to do that. The third, to me, is actually where we spend a lot of our time now. It's around query satisfaction. So thinking about, especially when it relates to content, what is the user trying to get at, right? What question do they want solved? If it's you as an individual, where has Michael Fleischner worked? That might be a query. Or what is Michael Fleischner known for? Or maybe Michael Fleischner SEO, Michael Fleischner reputation management, so on and so forth. Michael Fleischner marketing. So what are all those queries that people might be thinking about when it comes to you as an individual? But more importantly, for your business, what are people thinking about? What kind of questions are they asking? And can you answer those questions for them? Keywords. Now, keywords aren't important from a metadata perspective. So if you're more technical and you kind of understand how web pages work, there's content you can add on the back end of your web pages to tell the search engines what's going on. Google doesn't need keywords there anymore, but instead they need keywords on your page, not stuffed, 2 or 3. It's really topically what is this content about? So it's thinking about keywords and how to use keywords. Quality of host domain. So if you think about it, I like to use this example. You have 2 websites. One just started last week and doesn't have a lot of history with it. Another's been around for 12 years. And from a traffic perspective, they get a lot of traffic and there are a lot of links pointing to that site as a reference. Which site do you think is going to show up in search results when someone does a query? And the answer, of course, is the one that's aged, that has a lot of links, a lot of visitors, so on and so forth. So we want to get you there. I realize that every business has to launch a website at some point, and there are some ways to accelerate that process, but you do have to think about the host domain and what the quality is. User experience. Are people finding what they intend to get when they get to your site? This is true whether you're doing pay-per-click ads, right? If you show an ad for for a special price on something and you take them to a landing page where you're not talking about the special price or you're trying to sell something else, Google doesn't like that very much. If the user, on the other hand, sees information, they click on that, it takes them to the information they're expecting, they stay, they engage with that, it's going to produce a result. Technical, the technical piece is really making sure, can Google access all your web pages? Is it a fast load time? It's very closely related to user experience and making sure there are no technical errors. And then the final piece is personalization. So we're going to dive into that in a moment. But these are essentially the 8 areas that I think if you were to go back and think through each of these, just making small tweaks and changes and paying some attention to this can definitely help to really broaden your presence online. Okay, so let's focus on content. So I don't know if you guys own any Bitcoin, but you know, sometimes acquiring Bitcoin is not an easy thing. You have to figure out how to do it. What are the exchanges? How does the process work? Can you link with your bank? Do you have to only transfer certain types of coin to your Bitcoin, so on and so forth, right? So people might ask the query, how to buy Bitcoin? And look at these results. Yes, there are ads at the top, and there are some news stories that Google is bringing in, but the #1 organic, true organic result or listing of a website, the title is actually an article, How to Buy Bitcoin. And who is it from? It's from a business that is a platform for trading Bitcoin. So you see the relevancy here of the content to not only the site itself, but also to the user's query. So again, think about that as you're producing quality. And I said here on the right, does the text match what Google calculates to be relevant, high quality, and more importantly, a match for the searcher's intent? All right. And I encourage you guys too that, you know, before you develop any content, go out to Google, do the research. You know, just by typing a few different questions, you'll see Google Suggest, which will tell you what people are searching for. You could do other keyword research using the keyword planner tool in Google AdWords. But even if you just go out yourself and just spend the 5 minutes, that's all it takes to do a couple of searches, it might help you better you know, script what that headline is going to be and ultimately what the content is going to look like. Okay, so here we're talking about links, and don't be confused. I actually have a Moz plugin here. Moz is, shout out to Moz and Rand Fishkin, who runs that company. They're kind of the end all be all when it comes to SEO, and they've got some really fantastic tools for kind of evaluating how well optimized your site is and some other digital assets you might have. This is one of their plugins that shows us a little bit more information about these search results. So here I did a search for iPhone 8 reviews, and you'll see 2 listings. These are the top 2 listings. You'll notice the first one is actually using the snippet that kind of pulls in ratings. So that's really interesting that they prioritize that one. But they're both from really legitimate sources. So how does Google know to put one over the other? And again, it's a machine that's doing this, not an individual. So that gives us some insight into some of the things that might be going on with their algorithm, right? Now, what I find interesting as well is the first one matches the search query exactly. iPhone 8 review, okay, left off the S, I get it. But the other one is iPhone 8 and 8 Plus review. So I'm not saying that's the only factor, but it's all of these little things, right? It's like death by 1,000 cuts that may make the difference between having you ranked first versus having you ranked second for a particular query. So here it says the best types of links that you can have, and we're going to talk about that in a moment, are given, anchor text rich, followed links from high quality sources that still matter to Google. What you can see in this Moz result, that's the black box at the bottom, it's showing from a page authority measure how authoritative this result is, the page where this result lives, and you can see that the first one is a 71 page authority, the one beneath is a 52 page authority. And chances are the reason why that is would be because of the number of links pointing directly to that page. There are 84 links pointing to that page, and then 23 links pointing to the second page. On the right-hand side, it talks about domain authority. That's what DA stands for. And that means wired.com and consumerreports.org. And you can see that the domain authority of Wired is actually higher than consumerreports.org. And it's because of these factors, we believe, that the first result is Wired and the second is Consumer Reports. So once you know why something exists, you can work to change it. But that's kind of the link piece and you know, an insight into how that works. Query satisfaction, we talked about this briefly. If Google sees high rates of, we call it pogo sticking, but people jumping around, right? They're looking at content, doesn't answer their query, so they click something else or move something else, or other signals that your page isn't solving search queries, they'll likely rank you lower. So you have to think about how good are you at answering a searcher's query. That's extremely important. Okay, so keywords. So this is what I was talking about earlier with keywords. So using the searcher's keywords intelligently on your page still matters for rankings and for click-through rates, right? So you want to be mindful of some of the recent changes we've talked about. This is a really interesting case study with Ring. And you know, Ring was having some organic challenges, especially around click-through rate and the number of pages showing up in search queries. And one of the reasons was because they didn't use the specific search term, video doorbell. Now I know that sounds silly, right? They're a video doorbell, but that's not internally how they necessarily talked about themselves. And where they did, it didn't really translate to the web in terms of what we call metadata. So that's your title and your descriptions, so on and so forth. So again, part of it is just being aware and saying, all right, keywords matter. So instead of titling this page, you know, Phil's dry cleaning, it's going to be Phil's dry cleaning for shirts and skirts. I'm making it up. But it all depends on the keyword phrases that people are using to find businesses like yours. All right, so think about how you're going to integrate. Number one, what keywords are important based on the actual, not only the site, but the pages that you want to rank well for. And then how are you going to integrate those, right? Is that going to be just part of this phrase? Is it going to be at the beginning of the phrase, which is kind of what we recommend? Are you going to include it in the description, which you should at least once? And where does it fall on your page? And I would recommend too, only use the phrase 2, 3, maybe up to 4 or 5 times on your page. I wouldn't stuff paragraphs. Google's gone way beyond that, and they'll notice that you're trying to, it's called keyword stuffing. Okay, quality of host domain. What do I mean? Well, here are a bunch of different sites. So let's say somebody is kind of searching, and again, these results are out of Moz, and you can see their trust and ranking factors there. But essentially what it's doing is it's taking all of these different factors. How many internal links are there, external links, how old is the site, how many pages does it have, so on and so forth. And it's ranking all of these things. And what tends to happen is the sites that do better on some of those criteria, meaning they are more authoritative. This has a score of 88, which is extremely high. They're the ones that it's like a rising tide lifts all ships, so that if you're adding new pages, even though the pages are new, if the host domain is authoritative, Google will automatically assign a really good score to those pages because it's associated with a quality domain. And user experience. I still get some sites where people are using JavaScript heavily. They're using interstitials. They're using pop-ups. They're using exit pops. They're using all of these crazy things. And Google sees that, right? Because Google crawls everybody's site. So it goes back to user experience. and trying to avoid these penalties from Google, meaning, can users access your site quickly? Can they access it on any device and it's a good user experience? How many times have we taken a site that we like on desktop, we use it on our mobile, and it's cut off because it doesn't, rejigger to provide a good mobile experience? And this is extremely important. Google came out either last year or the end of the year before saying that they are in fact penalizing sites that do not have a good mobile experience. Now, if your business is on WordPress or Wix or even a GoDaddy type hosted account, chances are it's fine on mobile, but you should definitely take a look at it and make sure that you're really customizing that experience with the user. Because if the user has a positive experience, that helps your reputation, that helps you as a business, and it says, hey, I'm easy to do business with. Technical crawl. So these are some of the technical factors I had mentioned. So, can website crawlers actually access your site? So is it text? Is it not text? Are there images? How long does it take to load? If you are using images or video, are they compressed so it still loads quickly? So the technical crawl is really important, and it is closely tied to user experience, because chances are, if your pages aren't loading quickly and you're having all these issues, it's not a positive experience. All right, personalization. Here's another thing to keep in mind. The geography, device, your search history, maybe the timing of the query, they can all change Google results pretty quickly. So I have a friend out in Silicon Valley, and he actually typed this into his browser in the upper left there, sexism in Silicon Valley. You can see what his top results were. It was actually news results and the actual feed. I did the same here in New Jersey, and I got a completely different set of results. So just because you do a search on your own desktop or your own mobile device, never assume, because you will be wrong, that that's what every user is seeing. A good thing you can do, use incognito mode. If you're going to do a search, maybe using a browser, or have other people in your business do searches from their devices, just so you can kind of understand what consistently shows up. And that might give you a sign as to where you need to put your content, right? A good way, even with rep management for individuals, is look at other executives, other people in your profession. Let's say you're dealing with attorneys. I worked with a firm in the past where I was working with one attorney, and we looked at all the other attorneys and what was showing up on their profiles or in their search results, and we said, hey, you're not listed on this site, you're not listed on that site, maybe this is an opportunity. So keep that in mind. Look at local competitors, look at competitors outside your particular region, and that'll give you some clues as to really what you can build into those search results to create a more robust reputation. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of tie this all together. And I mentioned Rand Fishkin earlier in the presentation, and I wouldn't do this justice if I didn't let you know that I actually took this from one of his presentations called Whiteboard Friday, because it does really encapsulate almost everything that we talked about, and I just love the cartoons. So let's work through this, and I'll kind of explain each and every one of these. So you want to rank well this year, here's what you need to do. Your site needs to be crawlable. It needs to be accessible, so no dynamic URLs that make it difficult for Google. And you want Google to be able to easily and quickly access that content and get it in their index. The other, we talked about keyword research to uncover words and phrases that the searcher, the query, is using to find answers to problems that they're trying to solve. Again, Google's moving in this direction. We know this. So why not you? Why not you be the one to provide the answers to those particular queries? And then think about what are all the related keywords or related searches they may have. The other, spend a few minutes, investigate the SERP, that's the search engine result placements, to find what Google believes to be relevant to the keywords searchers. And the little kind of cartoon over here is, what's the searcher intent? What types of content appear Are there any missing? Maybe you do a search result and it is all text. Great, do a quick video on YouTube. Do it on your phone, upload it to YouTube, tag it correctly, and it could show up in search results. Have the most credible, amplifiable person team available to create content that serves the searcher's goal and solves their task better than anyone else on page one. We've been talking about this all along. The reality is, if you do not have the resources to create content, you can find a freelancer or a company or an agency to do it for you. Craft a compelling title, meta description, and URL, and other elements that can appear in the snippet. Again, be deliberate about how you're titling things, what query you're truly answering, and try to answer that in the first paragraph of your content, and then expand on that below. Let's see. Intelligently employ your primary, secondary, and related keywords in the page's text and content. Again, it's not just enough to do the title and description. You want to make sure it flows throughout your content. And I would even say over a cluster of pages, maybe related to a set of services that you guys provide. You want to make sure that you do the keyword research and you integrate that into the results. Where relevant, use rich snippet and schema markup to enhance the visibility potential. So for example, I'm working with a client now who does a lot around property taxes. So we kind of mark up the owner of the property, the name, the address, the city, the state, so that it comes up in searches with references to their content. Optimize the page to load fast and look great on any device. We talked about this. Most people are using mobile today. They're not starting with the desktop, so keep that in mind. And then finally, which we didn't talk about, but it's really important to mention, have a great answer to the question, who will help amplify this information and why? Then what you want to do is you want to think about that link building strategy, meaning how can I get other sites to link to this content or other individuals to link to this content? And that amplification is extremely important because it speaks to your authority as a presence online. So, you know, what separates your tractor business from someone else's tractor business? Well, if everybody's referencing your site because of maybe your models, the education around the different types of tractors, what it takes to get your particular license to operate certain tractors, so on and so forth, and it's valuable content, and everybody's pointing to it, well, then Google's going to put you higher in search results. So these are the factors that you should really kind of use this as a checklist, you know, in addition to those 8 boxes. As you think about your content strategy, your web strategy, your digital strategy, which really all culminates in a strong online reputation. Because if you can own more than one result on a search page, you have a much higher probability of getting that traffic. And today you have the ability to do that. And that ultimately will take you over the finish line and help you improve your online presence. All right, so that's it from my end. I know we're going to answer some questions here real quickly, but if you guys do want to reach out, you've got questions, make sure to ping me directly. Before I go or answer questions, I do want to thank Conversa. I've been doing webinars with these guys for probably 3 or 4 years now. Great company, great tools and resources, and I definitely encourage you guys to learn more. And with that, Jim, I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Hey, truly fire hose. My goodness, trying to take it all in. There's a lot. We do have a couple of questions. The first one was, will we be able to get access to, they were asking about the slides, I think. We typically provide the video. I have considered the slides. I'm not always able to get access to those. It sounds like Michael is willing to provide that. So absolutely. I will get a mechanism in place to make that a possibility. There will be a link sent to you after. It takes me a while to get everything ready. Once it's ready, I'll send the links. We'll have that. There is a second question, and it has to do with the Google My Business box. They want to know, how do we make that appear?
Yeah, so I'll give you the quick answer, and hopefully this is enough. So the Google search box is driven by something called Google My Business. So you literally Google My Business. When you need a Gmail account to log in. If you don't, you should have one. When you log in, you will be able to essentially do a search for your business. So you'll type in your name, your address. Google will try to find you. Either it will or it won't. It doesn't matter. If it does, select the business, make sure the address is correct. And then we'll ask you to verify your business, usually by postcard. And the way that works is you click a button. They will actually send a physical postcard to your business address. When you get that, you open it up. It gives you a URL to go to, and you literally type in, you go to the URL, type in I think it's a 6-digit code. I could be wrong, but I think it's 6 digits, and hit enter, and you are quote unquote verified. Now, what that means is essentially you're going to start showing up in search results for queries that are related to your business. The second step, and probably equally important, is going through that profile and filling out all the information, which is things like obviously your address, hours of operation, so on and so forth, pictures, creating a profile image, all of those sorts of things. So, it's a pretty simple process. People are kind of daunted by, like, what is it going to take? But if you go through that verification process, which is literally probably take you 3 minutes to set it up, and then once you get the postcard, another 30 seconds, you will start showing up with that billboard.
Okay, fantastic. No new questions beyond what we've had there. I know a lot of interest that, I think another one just came in. Let me see what we've got here. No, it's the same one. Okay.
Excellent.
Oh, no, there is a question. If Google has wrong info on your company, how do you get this corrected, i.e. change, for instance, the corporate status from Inc. to LLC?
So there are a couple different ways to do that. One is if you control, well, it depends. Let me take a step back. If it's a Google business or Google My Business profile, you can change that yourself. You can actually log into that and you can make the change and resubmit it. They may ask you to re-verify because it is a name change, but you do have that control. If in search results you're showing up, and let's say the first listing related to your company is your website, and that's wrong, well, on the back end of your home page in the metadata, you can change the title, and that will populate the web and the search result. So it all depends on what it is. Oftentimes, it's something you can control. If it's something Google related, and maybe I didn't address the query well, sometimes I know even with Google My Business, you can suggest an edit. And you just, if you see it in search results, you can click on it and suggest an edit. I've done that process. It takes like forever, sometimes 4 weeks. But if it is a legitimate change, they will put it through. And that's with the Google My Business profile. But the other results, you really need to kind of take a look at and see what the source is, whether or not you have control to change it, and go from there.
Another question. Does posting on Google Biz pages help in ranking?
Yeah, so we believe it does. Again, a lot of this is more art than science. I can tell you from the businesses that I've worked with, we always start with the Google My Business profile, and then we actually look at some of the secondary, profile sites or directory sites. And I'm talking about the Yelps of the world and city searches and open tables or what have you, because oftentimes Google is referencing those other sites to determine authority. So the reason why the Google My Business profile helps is because Google wants, it goes back to the user experience, and they want people interacting with legitimate businesses. So if legitimate businesses, those that are in their index, essentially their directory, have been verified, and it says, okay, well, there are 2 possible results for this. One is in our business directory and is verified, and one isn't, then we're going to put the one that's verified up top. So that's where it tends to help, as well as kind of the authority that you get from the links that are included in that profile that are linking to your site, to your website. So it helps in a number of different ways.
Okay, another question. I'm going to try to paraphrase a little bit. Apparently, some difficulty getting the Google My Business Google Maps to show things correctly. Been working on that for a year or so, and things aren't going well.
Yeah, so that's not the first time I've heard that. I know some people have had some difficulty with that. Generally, the easiest and best way to get that resolved is to use a data aggregator. We didn't really have time to talk about that today, but one of the services that we use pretty extensively essentially lets you create your business profile once and then distribute it to other sites like Google Maps and some of the other directories that I've mentioned, Facebook, Yelp, so on and so forth, because of that consistency. And that's generally what Google is looking for. So one of the challenges with the address may be that it doesn't appear consistently across the web. So wherever that address happens to appear, you want to make sure that everything is exact. So, if it's 123 Main Street, it says 123 Main Street, not Main ST period. I know it seems insignificant, but from Google's perspective, which is a machine, the most legitimate businesses live at the same place. They've got the same phone number. The address never changes. So any inconsistency can throw that off. So my recommendation there is obviously stay on the path if you've already started, but consider a data aggregator or a distribution service to some of these directories. And third would be just make sure that there's some consistency wherever that address appears. And again, if you want more information, feel free to reach out and I'll give you some additional guidance.
Michael, how are you set on time for answering questions? So you have a couple more here.
Yeah, time for one more.
Okay. What we're being asked here is Google search engines, do they use graphics to determine ranking? Because later in the presentation, this person thought you had talked that text was what was used. So he's looking for some clarification.
Yeah, so that's kind of a broad question, but so what Google is using is an algorithm based on, we know, over 200 factors. We know that from all the patent filings that they've made over the last number of years. Those factors, keep in mind that it's multimedia today. So they're not just ranking the text of websites. They're ranking images, they're ranking videos, they're ranking PDF documents, they're ranking presentations via SlideShare, they're ranking news, they're ranking all of these different things. So it's not just text, it's many factors.
Okay, fantastic. This has been a great hour that we've spent here together, everyone. Michael, you've given us a lot of insight. I know that at some point in the future we'll have Michael back. We do have webinars every week that we possibly can get them scheduled. Great information, helpful for us all, but when we have Michael back, be watching for the invitation. You'll get some more great information. Thanks a lot, Michael.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone.